what's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Fins Faithful Podcast. Thanks for joining us on this Friday. A lot of turmoil surrounding the Dolphins, and not only that, their coaching staff, their front office. With this poor 1-4 start, to no surprise. No better person we have on today than Tony Pauline from Sportskeeda, which is he had an article this week what he's been hearing with the latest with Mike McDaniel, Chris Grier, who might be more safe than the other, who might be gone, who might not, and also. He mentions kind of the type of coach the Dolphins will be looking at if they do decide to get rid of Mike McDaniel. And he mentions a name in there. It's a controversial, juicy name. I don't know how I feel about it. We'll get into all that with Tony and more. So, Dolphin fans, this one you want to pull up a seat for. As always, we're live with you guys on YouTube. So, guys, make sure you drop the likes, hit the subscribe button, get notified, too. Make sure you hit the notification so you can find out when we're live. And of course, the chat. We love when you guys are active. And my favorite part is Jason, the comments below the video after the show. These guys are smarter than I am and us. So I learn new stuff every day, so we appreciate that. All right. But enough of me. Let's get into this. Not only am I joined, of course, by my co-host and co-pilot, Jason Sarney, but I mentioned we have Tony Pauline from Sportskeeda. Gentlemen, how you doing?
I'm okay. By reading some of the things on the internet and Twitter, there are a lot of Dolphin fans that want to come down. Oh, I should say, come up to New York and burn my house down. Yeah. But that's okay because there were Giant fans who wanted to burn my house down a couple of weeks ago, and that's turned out all right for them.
Yeah, I would say you stirred the pot a little bit in Dolphins Nation here, to say the least.
Don't feel bad, Tony. There's a lot of Simpson riot gifts all over the Dolphins community for many different topics, so don't even feel worried about it.
All right,
I'm not.
Yeah. I'm sure Tony's been doing this a while. He's dealt with it all. But all right, we're going to get into it all. But first, there was a tweet that mentioned you, and I think Omar Kelly involved, and you want to kind of address that. Kind of go ahead and address that before we get started.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's not much to address. I've known Omar for almost 20 years. We're more than colleagues. We're friends. And I think he tweeted out something that I was not talking to Stephen Ross, and I was I was going on rumors, and he's not incorrect. I mean, I've never implied or inferred or tried to make people believe that I'm on the phone with Stephen Ross or I'm talking to him. No, Omar was absolutely correct in his assessment of that. And as far as the rumors, well, it's all rumor until it comes true. I mean, is Tua going to play? Is he injured? Until he takes the field, it's all rumor. But let me say this. A few people may remember that right before COVID, and maybe actually right during the time of COVID, I put out a report that the word in the league was that Stephen Ross had offered Tom Brady a minority stake in the Miami Dolphins if he signed with them when he became a free agent. It was kind of scoffed at the time, and as we all found out, it was absolutely true, and the Dolphins were docked several draft picks. Now, I don't bring this back up to take a victory lap. I'm telling you this because the same sources that passed that information on to me, that Ross was basically tampering with Tom Brady, which came to be true. This is where I'm getting this information on what's going on with the Miami Dolphins coaching staff. And no, I've read a lot of the responses on Twitter. It has nothing to do with Rex. It's not coming from Rex Ryan's camp. I have no connections with Rex Ryan's camp. This is just what people who are close to the situation are telling me. And that's why I went with it, because it's a reliable source. He hit a home run out of the park for me with the information about Stephen Ross and Tom Brady prior to COVID. And this is what these people are hearing.
Yeah. So you're saying, to be clear, you're saying it's the same reliable source you had on that story is the same one that's telling you this now. So it kind of gives a little more for you. It's a little bit more reliable on your end, right? I mean,
100%, 100%.
So we'll talk about their 1-4 start, Jason, but let's get into the article first here because you mentioned it. So basically tell everybody basically just of the article, what you're hearing on McDaniel and Grier, how thin is the ice basically with Mike right now?
Well, you have to remember, this is just an extension, if you follow me, of an article that I wrote after the first week of the NFL season when the Dolphins had lost to the Indianapolis Colts. What was it, 33-8 or something like that. And if you read my initial article after week one, people were telling me that they said Stephen Ross would not be shy and would not think twice about pulling the plug on Mike McDaniel if things didn't turn around. And the things I said, and that point, I've got the article right in front of me, was within the next 7 to 8 weeks. If things didn't turn around, Ross would pull the plug on Mike McDaniel and fire him during the season. So this is really just an extension of that story. It's 4 weeks later. Since those 4 weeks, the Dolphins are 1-3. Tensions are starting to build. That's not just from me. That's what Mike McDaniel said during his press conference, that the owner's very, very frustrated. And for that to come out in the public, that tells you where it's at. And the feeling is, from my sources, if things don't take a dramatic change within the next 2 to 3 weeks, which will bring us to the end of October, beginning of November, look for it's very possible that Stephen Ross will pull the plug on McDaniel and fire him. And that goes hand in hand with what I reported at the beginning of September after week 1, that after that loss to the Colts, it was about 7 to 8 weeks for McDaniel to turn it around. And the reason is simple. I mean, what do the Dolphins have to look forward to? I mean, what does the future of the Dolphins look like? You know, you look at the New York Giants last night, beat the Philadelphia Eagles. They got a young quarterback. They have a coach who, like McDaniel, was hanging on by a string, but they have things to look forward to. You look at the New England Patriots, who beat the Buffalo Bills, last week. Obviously, they have a bright future. You look at the Dolphins and the New York Jets. What's their future? What is there to look forward to? What is Tua going to be the next 3 to 4 years? Is he going to play the next 3 to 4 years? I mean, I hope he stays healthy, but you can't escape the fact that he's one massive hit away from potentially, retiring from the NFL. So that was the frustration, is not only the record, but the direction of the team.
Yeah. And so McDaniel, you would say McDaniel is, if it does, do you see a possibility if this Chargers game kind of turns upside down? I know, Jason, you've been predicting, my co-host here, Jason Sarney, is predicting this is the game because there's a lot of narrative base. Herbert, Tua, Harbaugh, they wanted them. Is it too soon, or do you see more 2-3 weeks out?
All I was told was 2 to 3 weeks. And, would it surprise me if they get clobbered by the Colts, by the Chargers? He gets fired? No, but that's, I was just reporting what was told to me by my source.
Very fair enough, Tony. And really, again, appreciate you joining us. We love the insight. Coaching scenarios, GM scenarios aside, what can you analyze from this 1-4 start? And do you think there's any hope of a turnaround?
No. I mean, I think that they were fortunate enough to play the New York Jets within those first 5 years, and the Jets, more so than the Dolphins, just can't seem to get out of their own way. I mean, it's a disaster. And even during that game, I think as much as the Dolphins won, the Jets lost. So in the recent article, I posted the next 4 opponents. There's the possibility there for a couple of wins. But I think the problem is the loss against the Panthers was so devastating because the Panthers are not a good team. They have a quarterback that is, up and down more so than the weather. And for them to lose that game the way they did, I mean, really, I think led to McDaniel coming out and saying how frustrated the owner is. If they had lost a game like that to the Patriots, to the Bills, I don't think you would have heard it. But losing like that to the Panthers, I mean, was devastating. I was on my way home. I didn't believe that they lost because I know they were winning that game through most of it. So is there a chance for a turnaround? I guess there's a chance for everything except for me growing my hair back by tomorrow morning. and I don't think I think the only thing that has a greater chance of that is the Dolphins turning it around with the next 4 to 5 weeks.
Yeah. And let's talk about Chris Grier. Grier, he's somebody that, there's a lot of talk that, he won't let go because, the Brian Flores lawsuit. Are you hearing Grier has a little more job security? Is it hand in hand, McDaniel and Grier and Tua? Are they all tied together, do you think? Or what do you see Grier's status?
Well, what I was told was my source just wasn't sure. He said it could be both Grier and McDaniel. It could be just McDaniel. He just wasn't sure. Grier's been in that organization for a long, long time. He survived a couple of different regime changes. So obviously, he's a favorite or has the ear of the owner. What do I think? I think common sense would say, well, you get rid of both of them, or maybe you keep the general manager for a few weeks after you let the coach go. But the information was they just didn't know. It wasn't a positive that they're going to keep Grier. It wasn't a negative that they're absolutely going to let him go. They just didn't know.
Yeah.
To pull that thread a little bit, Tony, on the Grier scenario, listen, I was a fan of his a couple of years ago. I liked what he was doing. And I know, to bring it back to another story that you broke, I believe, a number of years ago, was the Laramie Tunsil trade. And getting that stockpile of picks was phenomenal. But 2020, I feel, was a Hindenburg of a draft when you look at it. And if you dissect it from 2019 to 2023, the last 2 years are kind of, up in the air right now, he's made 32 picks. 7 are now still on this team, with one of them, Liam Eichenberg, on the IR. So it's almost like, what are we doing here? What's your overall assessment of the moves, the non-moves, the lack of keeping good players, the whole kit and caboodle here?
It's been a disaster, and it's reflective in their record of 1-4. I mean, you said it. They've let a lot of good talent walk out the front door via free agency. They traded a lot of talent that they could have used. They really haven't replenished the talent that has walked out the front door via free agency or trade or trades. And again, what is the direction of the team? That is, in my opinion, is very damning. You look at the Dolphins. I mean, it looks like at some point in time in the near future, they're going to have to rebuild. Hopefully rebuild around the quarterback if he's healthy. But they need so many holes. And this is a team, like you said, not that far removed from the playoffs just a couple of years ago. As I said in the first article, one of the problems that people point out to me was McDaniel, when he was in San Francisco, earned his chops basically running the ball. He comes to Miami. They want to build the offense around Tua. They've got it was described to me as a soft offensive line, an offensive line that's not very aggressive, which means you're going to struggle running the ball unless you can get it to some of your speed backs, which they have decent speed backs. Troubles protecting Tua. I mean, obviously, they were probably caught a little bit off guard by the retirement of Teron Armstead. I think it starts there, and then it builds out from the players that they have traded away or just let walk out the front door via free agency.
Yeah. What is Grier viewed around league circles? Like you heard when you talk about Grier as a personnel guy, because we always have trouble pinpointing who's responsible for this, who's responsible for that. Well, what is the perception of Grier? He's been doing this a long time. His father was in the, his brother's a GM for the San Jose Sharks. So what's the league-wide perspective on Chris?
I mean, most guys in the league, you'll get your detractors, you'll get people who like him. Some people look at it glass half full. Others will look at it glass half empty. I mean, the bottom line is people will look at the record. People will look at the talent that has been drafted. I mean, Bill Belichick, when he was at his prime, wasn't known as a great personnel guy when it came to the draft, but he just kept winning Super Bowls. So, I get both when you talk to people, and I don't go out and ask about Grier specifically, make that clear.
Yeah. Just what you heard.
But when the name comes up in a conversation, you get both sides of the conversation.
Okay, yeah. And shout out to everybody in the chat. We're with Tony Pauline here, of course. Stirred up Dolphin Nation here with his article about McDaniel and Grier. So we have him giving what he's hearing, the latest he's heard directly, not from Stephen Ross, but his sources. He wanted to clarify that, of course. I think very few are talking to Mr. Stephen Ross. You mentioned coach type, if they do move on from Mike McDaniel. It's going to be more. You mentioned Dan Quinn, more disciplinarian, and you had a name in there. Tell us a little bit of what you're hearing about that, what direction they might want to go if they decide to move on from Coach McDaniel.
Well, when I talked to the few people I talked to, they said if they get rid of McDaniel, what is the process going to be? Is Ross going to bring – and they didn't know. Is Ross going to bring in a consultant? Is he going to hire a consulting firm? Is he going to reach out to people he knows in the league? What is the process going to be? That's unanswered. And that's a big part of the puzzle. Again, go back to the New York Jets because I'm here in New York. Woody Johnson hired Mike Tannenbaum. and Spielman to do the search. And, Tannenbaum evidently wanted to get this coaching search consulting firm up. Thus far, it's been a disaster. So we don't know what the process is going to be. But they seem pretty set on the fact that moving forward, it would be a veteran coach who's been in the league a while, that's a disciplinarian. And the reason is because it didn't work out with Mike McDaniel. He's already experienced the up-and-coming coach, the laid-back guy, the players coach, and it hasn't worked out. So the belief was it's going to be more a veteran coach that's been in the league for a while, has experience, is a bit of a is a bit of a disciplinarian, and that's when the name Rex Ryan popped up. And that's an obvious name. I mean, Rex Ryan had success when he was with the New York Jets, went to the Buffalo Bills. He's been out of the league. His name was talked about coming back to the New York Jets, head coach of the New York Jets. And that was a name that was thrown out there. It was a Rex Ryan type of coach. And they said it wouldn't surprise them if it was Rex Ryan. No, it doesn't mean it doesn't mean it's definitely going to be Rex Ryan, but that's one of those types of coaches, since the Dan Quinns are having great success in Washington. That was one of the names that was brought up to me for that reason.
Yeah, what's funny is I think you can get in trouble going the complete opposite just to go to the complete opposite. I think you got to get the right candidate. I think it's been the problem with the Dolphins is, we have this guy in the left extreme, then we're going to hire the right guy. You know what I mean? Jason, I know you agree with that too. Kind of that. I think that's a problem. I don't like to hear, and I hope it's not Rex Ryan, John Gruden. I know Rex has been after this job for a while, right? Like, and the University of Miami. I heard he's been after that job for a while. But anyways. Yeah, so
it's not just the head coach. It's everybody from the top down. And I mean, you look no further than the Washington Commanders, who basically turned the franchise around on a dime by getting a new owner who brought in the right people, who brought in different points of views. Remember, I also had written when Harris bought the team that he was going to look at it from an NBA point of view and bring in basketball people, and thus he did. And it's not just the coach. It's the general manager, it's the assistant coaches, it's the player development people, because that is, people talk about the draft. Did you draft the right people? Well, maybe you drafted the correct players. You just didn't develop them correctly. That's what we see time and time again. So yeah, you want to bring in the right coach, but you want to bring in the right general manager. You have to have the right president of operations running the organization. You have to do what the Washington Commanders did basically over a couple months span. And a team, again, like the New York Jets, have not been able to do for 15 years.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Jason, you're going to go here in a second. Because I've always said, you got to hire the right, like the Adam Peters. It's a domino of right decisions. Then he makes the right decisions under him, and that leads to winning on the field. It's before – the Dolphins' problem is before it gets to the green grass on the field. You know what I mean? I think that's been the biggest problem. So that's a great point. I always reference the hockey team down here with Bill Zito, the Florida Panthers. I don't know if you're a hockey fan, Tony, but they hired the right guy, and therefore he made the right decisions, power moves, convictions, these things. I think that's the most important thing. The question is Stephen Ross capable? He's done a great job on the business side, but on the football side, the fans, what we care about the most hasn't really turned.
And I think what you're seeing more and more these days is the teams will hire a coach first, and then oftentimes hire a general manager that can work with the coach. And, the reason that's done is football is a different game these days. They see the Washington Commanders and they see these teams that can turn it around on a dime, and they want instant success. There's very few owners and organizations that are willing to, build from the ground up and try and build for success over the course of time, a la the Detroit Lions. So yeah, I agree with you. It's like I said, it's not just a coach; it's everywhere. If you have a Bill Parcells type of coach, who is a a dictator and rules with an iron fist, maybe you can get away with it. But again, that's going to be very tough to do in 2025 with the players these days.
Jason, I know you like to handle our questions, Jason. Go ahead here. We have one from Cap, Jason.
Yeah, no, Cap for life. We appreciate you, one of our loyal listeners. And he kind of brings up what I wanted to follow up on what you just said. I think that they need to bring in an absolute totalitarian guy without any, outside ear or outside wording to his ear, someone who could really make the decision on a head coach. So with that said, does that guy already exist in Miami? Champ Kelly, Marvin Allen, what do they do from what you know? So you can tell everyone in Cap for Life, job titles, responsibilities. Let's just clear the air there.
All I can talk about is Champ Kelly, and a lot of people liked him when he was with the Raiders. A lot of people thought he should have got that Raider job after Josh McDaniel was fired, and you had that whole. Well, I'm sorry, before Josh McDaniel was brought in, they should have kept him around. There are people in the league who really like Champ Kelly. Now, is he the general manager that can build the team moving forward? I mean, it's a bit of a risk. You never know about these guys until they get into that position. I do know this goes back years when I forget the name of the coach was fired. They brought McDaniel. They thought that the Raiders made a mistake.
Oh,
I'm sorry,
Flores, right?
No, it wasn't Flores. It was the other guy. He was the defensive.
No, go ahead. I'm not. Jason, maybe it was a defensive coach.
Yes. Had a relationship with the Jaden Daniels family. That's a long story. But they thought that Champ Kelly should have been kept around, and he wasn't. So he has, from people I talk with, Champ Kelly.
The Raiders coach, you mean? The Raiders coach, not the Dolphins. Yeah, I remember you talking about. The name slips my head. Yeah. He was a veteran coach, right?
He was a long time for a while, and
while you're looking that up, shout out to everybody in the chat. We got Tony Pauline on. Make sure you guys, if you're watching anywhere else, come on over to YouTube, drop the like and the thumbs up, and help support us here. Tony's breaking it down. The latest he's heard.
Antonio Pierce,
yeah.
And I have it mixed up. It was actually they thought that Champ Kelly would have been McDaniels was before Antonio Pierce. I apologize, and it goes back to the Rich Bisaccia era.
That's the guy. Yeah,
Rich Bisaccia took the team over from John Gruden and did just an incredible job. And people thought they should have kept him around. But again, Champ Kelly is well liked. I apologize. I had those two, the McDaniels and the Pierce regimes flipped around.
Yeah.
So let's touch on Tua, Tony. You mentioned that he's one hit away, and we hate saying it. No one, wants to talk injury to that severity. But do you think that the hip injury from college, and now there's a new injury report with the hip that's unrelated to that injury? What are your thoughts on him long term? And is he still the guy for this franchise?
Well, he's got to be, with all the money that he's going to be paid. You can't give up on him. Now, I think the greater story here is, teams really got to rethink, these mini quarterbacks, these guys that are barely 6 foot tall, barely 200 pounds, whether it's Tua, whether it's Bryce Young, whether it's Kyler Murray. I mean, the only, many of us who've been in the business for a while were taken back when Baker Mayfield was the first pick of the draft because he didn't fit the prototype 6'2.5", 225 pounds. And Mayfield has had some success, but he's a broader guy. I think the bigger issue here is, I think teams will start to look away from these smaller RPO type quarterbacks. As far as the Dolphins are concerned, you're going to have to ride the horse with Tua and find out where the story ends. Whether it's a winning franchise, whether it's he just gets beat up. I mean, you're not going to switch it at this point in time. We just have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah. What have you know? We say it on here all the time. He might be an aging 27-year-old quarterback with that hip, because you remember coming out. Let's talk about that 2020 draft here, because we're playing the Chargers and Herbert. How was your evaluation? I mean, that draft was the COVID draft. There should be 30 for 30s on that draft. Everybody was home. I remember the kind of every day there was a new story. What was your evaluation of those two guys compared? And now their careers have played out. Which one has surprised you, or is this about what you thought they'd be?
Well, I mean, I always like the classic larger quarterbacks. I don't like these smaller guys because of what you've seen happen to Tua. Because Bryce Young, I mean, Bryce Young's just going to get the crap beat out of him. He's so small. So I always like the bigger guys. Now, Justin Herbert, if you remember, had his issues in Oregon before entering the draft. There were questions as to whether or not he could lead a team. He always faltered in the big spot at Oregon, and that was a major concern, especially going to the next level. That wasn't a concern for Tua because he was a big play quarterback who always came through at the University of Alabama. The concerns for Tua were size and the injury history coming out of Alabama. Would he be able to stay healthy? Would he be able to stand up to the rigors of the NFL? I mean, I was split on both players. I didn't think that Justin Herbert would turn out to be the leader that he is now with the Chargers, the take command guy, because he struggled doing that at Oregon. I didn't want to see Tua get as banged up as he constantly has been, although you had to know that that was a possibility.
Yeah. When you mentioned, did you hear anything about the Flores thing at the time about Brian wanting Andrew Thomas at 5 and Jordan Love at 18? How true is that? And you look back on it now, Andrew Thomas playing pretty good for the Giants and Jordan Love. Because I've heard it from a few sources on that. Jason, I know you remember that whole story. Did you hear any? How true was that? Or you didn't really hear anything about it?
I didn't hear about specific players that Flores wanted. All I heard was, and this was brought up again to me when with the McDaniel story, that Flores did not want Tua, and that's one of the reasons why he was pushed out. He was very vocal that Tua was not his guy, was not his type of not his type of quarterback. I did not hear he wanted this player here and another player there. All I heard was that one of the reasons why the relationship went south so fast was because he didn't want Tua, and one of the reasons McDaniel was brought in was because he understood that Tua was going to be his quarterback, the quarterback of the Dolphins moving forward.
So going on, Tony, the rookie class now, I know we're kind of skipping ahead here, but what are your thoughts on the rookie class? If you have Jonas Avainaya, who has not been looking terrific, Kenneth Grant, who not been looking great as well. Is it too soon to really throw a judgment out?
It absolutely is. But, again, this is 2025. I go back to Bill Parcells. He used to say it takes 3 years to really determine whether or not a player is worthy of being on an NFL roster. And people want the answer now in 3 weeks. So, I think when you have a struggling team and the rookies on that team are struggling, it kind of exasperates the situation. And people are going to, especially when it comes to Chris Grier, say, you had these picks, you drafted these guys, and they're doing nothing. It goes part and parcel to where I say, what's the future? What are you pointing at as the future for this team, for the franchise to be bright? It doesn't look like that. I personally believe it is too soon, but that's not the way of the world in 2025.
Yeah. What did you think of? Because I was a fan of Grant and Jonah. I said, that position. I think you made a great point. It's emphasized because of the struggles of Zach Sealer. The other guard position the Dolphins have. They're not surrounded by a group, so it stands out. You're relying on 2 linemen to be impacts year one, which is difficult. Talk about that position. How it takes time. Derek Brown, Christian Wilkins. These guys who are great now, especially Derek Brown, they weren't Derek Brown year one. So there is some patience there, right? Especially at that lineman position. Tony, you do the draft stuff as good as anybody. That position is tough, right?
Well, it's not only tough, it's even tougher when you don't have Mason Graham lining up next to you collecting double team blocks. So, he benefited from that at Michigan. And I always said about Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham was the better prospect entering the 2025 draft, but Kenneth Grant had more upside. And Kenneth Grant, if coached correctly, if developed, if basically he applies himself, could be the better player 3 or 4 years down the road. Now it goes back to what I said. You talk about the coach. Well, it's not just the coach; it's the assistant coaches, and it's the player development department, the people in charge of developing players. Are they drafting the wrong players? or do they have the wrong people there who are incorrectly developing the players? Both arguments could be made. I do like Grant. We're 5 weeks into the season. Quick story. Back in 2018, I think it was like 3 weeks into the 2018 season after the Jets had drafted Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold was looking really good, and Saquon Barkley was playing great as well. And I was on a radio station in New York for literally 3 weeks after the season, and the argument was the Giants made a mistake by selecting Sam Darnold over selecting Saquon Barkley over Sam Darnold. I bring that up because that's where we're at now. If you're an early draft pick, if you're a first round draft pick, and you're not a star coming out of the box, people want to brand you as a bust, and that's just wrong.
Yeah, I agree. You got to wait on this. Like we say, Jason, especially the offensive line. Do you think Jonah? Question when because we do a bunch of draft stuff here. We evaluated Jonah. Do you think the move to the left side is hurting him? Because they say it's like what fun of me saying this is wiping yourself in the bathroom with the other hand.
Right. It's also a move from tackle to guard, so there's going to be some sort of there's going to be a bit of a transition there. I thought he was terrific. I liked him at Arizona. I liked him during the Senior Bowl. Obviously, there's going to be a bit of a transition there. I mean, when you look at their offensive line, I said that the word is the Dolphins line is soft. He's one of the few guys on that line that is not soft. I mean, he will tear your head off.
Yes.
So playing a new position, different side of the offensive line, you should give him some time. I mean, he should be given the benefit of the doubt this early in his career.
Just want to touch on that again. Earlier in our season of shows, right before the season started, George and I were both saying, you got to put Jonah on the right side at guard. If you're going to move his position, at least keep the same side. You're going to pair him with a veteran. James Daniels got hurt, but hypothetically, you would have paired him with young Patrick Paul. Do you think that this change of position that the Dolphins have done a lot, this cross-training, is a mistake? Because it's almost rinse and repeat with the same problems.
You answered the question right there. I mean, if they've had success at it, it wouldn't be a mistake. But they haven't had success at it. It is a problem. So I think, in asking me the question, you answered the question.
So confirmation, that's good too. I appreciate it.
So we know something, Jason. We're not complete morons here doing this. I wanted to ask you about Ross. Have you heard anything how Ross is handling this whole situation? Because he's been very patient, right? Have you heard anything on the level of frustration? I heard after what was it the one of the games this season, I forget which one of the losses, he was clearly visibly upset. Have you heard anything about that?
No, I mean, other than what I put in the article that, I put in the article what McDaniel had said about how frustrated the owner is. And again, go back to the first article I wrote after week one, and you can tell I didn't hear it. Those words were not used to me directly, but I was told that, Ross wouldn't think about pulling the plug midway through the season on McDaniel if things don't turn around. So obviously you can draw your own conclusions. Even though I did not hear that directly. And you know what? Listen, to Ross's credit, I know things are bad, but he's just looking to put the right people in charge and let them run the football organization. That will eventually come to fruition. That will eventually work itself out, as opposed to, say, an owner who is making personnel decisions, an owner who is too overly involved. And again, I go back to the New York Jets and Woody Johnson, if you know what's going up here. When you have an owner who is trying to make football decisions that they're not qualified to make, that will lead to continual ruin. I think with Ross, I think he wants to win. He wants to put the right people in charge. He wants them to lead the team. It will eventually happen. Again, I know there's some frustration within Dolphin land, but I think fundamentally he's going about the right way. He's just got to get the right people in there.
Yeah. It's year 6 of this rebuild. You've been through the 21 drafts, all those two big crucial drafts. Where did it go wrong for you with the Dolphins? Was it just those two drafts they loaded up, or do you think they abandoned the plan of going young because they kind of got the Tyreek stuff and then they all went veteran and F the picks, tried to be the Rams, and neither worked,
Where did it go wrong? Probably on the offensive line, because if you are going to draft a guy like Tua, yeah, it's nice to get the speedsters like, the Tyreek Hills and draft the Jalen Waddles, but you better be able to protect him. You better make sure that he's standing upright, and you better have a great offensive line in front of you. And it seems like they want a finesse offensive line, a speed running game, yet they got a quarterback that's fragile. And that is just not a good combination. As far as, letting Christian Wilkins walk out the front door, I know he's not playing right now, and letting some of the other talent walk out the front door, or trading some of these guys, I just don't know what they're thinking. And I think that's part of the frustration of the owner when you're making these moves that seem to be counterproductive to the team, and your record is 1-4, and you're losing disastrous games to the Carolina Panthers as they did this past Sunday.
Yeah, and I agree. And we're sitting here looking at another merry-go-round cycle again coming up. And you mentioned Tua. Quickly, I have to ask you about the draft, the 26 class. I know with the NIL now, who comes out is a mystery. I'm a big Sellers fan. I'll tell you a guy I like, Tony, is Taylor Green out of Arkansas. I love the upside. What is your thoughts on this 26 QB class that they decided to dip their hand in it?
I think as my phone rings, I'm just not going to.
Stephen Ross calling you. Let's it's Ross.
954 number.
It's actually my mother.
As important, if not more.
Well, I think the quarterback class overall has been very disappointing. I think coming in, there were high hopes. There was a lot of potential. You look at the quarterback from Clemson, K.A. Klubnik. You look at Drew Allar. You look at Arch Manning. We can go into that. I mean, these guys have all been really disappointing. Garrett Nussmeier, I mean, he's not really big. He doesn't have a big arm. He makes some questionable decisions. John Mateer of Oklahoma, he's having a good year, but, how early in the first round you can take him? Fernando Mendoza is a guy from Indiana, is a guy that's on the rise. They have a big game against Oregon this weekend. Keep an eye on that. I am also a Norris Sellers fan. Yeah, I put it out a tweet in August after I did my South Carolina film. I said, if Dreff were held today and I need a quarterback and I had the first pick, I'm taking Lenore Sellers. He does need a lot of work on his game. He runs backwards when he's being pressured. There are some things that have to be ironed out. Let's see where he goes. Right now, I think he'd be better off as a redshirt sophomore going back to college for one more year to really get himself more ready for the NFL. As you pointed out, NIL makes those decisions a lot easier. I'm disappointed in the quarterback class compared to where I was at the beginning of the season. I agree with you about Tylen Green. He's a tremendous athlete. Tylen Green is one of those smaller RPO quarterbacks, except he's 6'5", 225 pounds, and can make all the throws. But the thing with Green, it goes back to what we talked about with coaching. You better have a good coach there who knows how to develop quarterbacks to get the best out of this guy and to get him to elevate his game. Overall, I'm not a Sam Levitt fan. Nico, I'm a Lavea of UCLA. Yeah. Let's see if he can build on, was the Penn State game a one-off incident? Was it the exception to the rule? Or is that the guy that we're going to see moving forward? Because if it is, he's going to make a big a big leap up draft boards, because he is your Tylen Green type, a bigger athletic passer that can make all the throws and pick up yardage with his legs.
Yeah, Sellers kind of, as I got into, I get into it more after the season starts, but I do some film. He reminds you of a UCF Dante Culpepper. Yeah. Sellers. He's got that. I mean, that one throw he made a few weeks ago on the run, you just Dolphin fans aren't used to seeing that ability. And it'd be kind of nice. I think the Dolphins, if they're going to go quarterback, they got to get somebody who's physical, can handle a change completely. But we have a question about Cap for Life. Our thoughts on Mendoza. If he's from down here, what are your thoughts on him? I see a lot of him top 5. Do you see that with him?
Possibly. Let's see what happens against Oregon. I mean, here's a guy, again, if you follow me, if you watch me, here's a guy who showed has got all the physical skills necessary. He's a bigger guy who can make all the passes. He's an athletic guy that can pick up yardage with his legs, escape the rush. As I've written before and I've talked about, part of the problem when he was at Cal was a turnover of coaches, offensive coaches, and he never really was able to get in the groove. Now he goes to Indiana. He has, in my opinion, the best football coach in the nation, college or NFL, in Kurt Cignetti, who really turned around Curtis Rourke's season a year ago, except Mendoza has got his head and shoulders much better physical traits, physical abilities than Curtis Rourke. And he's starting to really hit his stride. Now, the thing is, you go back to that Illinois game, you go back to the Iowa game, he was incredibly productive. He didn't make any, he made, I think he had one pick in the Iowa game, didn't make bad passes, but he didn't make a lot of hard NFL passes. I mean, a lot of stuff against Illinois were short receiver type screens where it was run after the catch. They won the game against Iowa on a 49-yard touchdown reception by Elijah Surratt, but it was actually a 5-yard crossing pattern where Surratt broke the tackle and then went another 44 yards. Oregon's got an attack defense. They don't have a strong secondary. They got some great pass rushers. They got some outstanding linebackers. I want to see Mendoza make those difficult NFL-type passes, get the ball through the tight windows, throw the outs, throw the ball downfield. If he does that and he starts to complete the package, I could absolutely see him moving into the top 15 and potentially being the second quarterback off the board if he enters the draft.
Okay.
It will be interesting, that Oregon-Indiana game. I'm looking forward to seeing that because I'm a Mendoza guy. I like the physical tools. I like that he's kind of a local kid. Doesn't really matter from a football sense, but I think that's an added benefit. But let's move and talk to the Chargers matchup. I feel like there's a lot of sub-stories for writers like us that you can love those stories. Harbaugh, Tua Herbert, back to the 2018 draft, you go Minka Fitzpatrick over Derwin James, and now look at how that played out. But what are your thoughts overall on the matchup, and how do you see it coming through?
And maybe they're catching the Chargers at the right time. The Chargers got pounded by the Commanders. They lost a difficult game to the Giants, which was Jackson Dart's first start. So I mean, as from my point of view, forget about the storylines. Looking at it from 2025 perspective, I mean, you talked about the turnaround, the potential turnaround for Mike McDaniel Dolphins. It would have to start here, because they're probably catching the Chargers at the right time, and they're playing a home game. Although I know that doesn't really matter too much, because going back for decades, I mean, how many times did the Dolphins sell the stadium out? But I mean, you want to say the Dolphins season starts Sunday? Well, it probably does for Mike McDaniel, and they're catching the team at the perfect time.
Yeah, and the whole Herbert Tua thing, it's it's going to be interesting here.
That's a Twitter meltdown storyline.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and you got to remember the Chargers are without both of their starting offensive tackles. I think Joe Walter's out. You may have to correct me on that.
Yeah, I think
it's looking like he's going to be out. Yeah, injury report wise.
So those are matchups that you could potentially exploit, and help make Herbert look a lot worse than Tua. From the Dolphins point of view. If
the Dolphins can exploit that that tackles, they've been pretty bad in pass blocking. But obviously, the Dolphins front seven, I can't explain it, Tony.
Really quick follow-up.
Yeah, go ahead.
How important is Weaver and Anthony Weaver's performance this game, knowing that your top two offensive linemen on the Chargers are out? How important is it for him?
And Hampton.
Well, of course, and Hampton, yes. Yeah.
Well, Weaver, I mean, when Weaver was hired by the Dolphins, it was nothing but, champagne, and he was the next star, and he was this, and it hasn't turned out like that. So it's important for him as a defensive coordinator. It's important for the whole coaching staff. But, yeah, I don't think the way it hasn't worked out with McDaniel the past couple seasons, I don't think people too happy with Weaver either.
Yeah, you haven't heard anything about if he does go about the replacement internally. Would it be Weaver, assuming not Bevel, or you haven't heard anything about that, right?
I've heard nothing at all.
Okay. All right, we have a question here, Jason, from Lou, our friend. We was on his show last night with him and Ash. Tony, you mentioned the Indiana coach. Would he or say Kirby Smart be an option as McDaniel's replacement?
I doubt it. I mean, really, the only college coach that has been talked about as a potential NFL coach the past couple of years is Dan Lanning of Oregon. I love Cignetti, but I think Cignetti would have to really show his chops at a major program, Notre Dame, whoever may be looking for a head coach. There's always a risk, as the Dolphins found out with somebody by the name of Nick Saban, when you reach into the college ranks and pull a guy up from the college ranks. Although Nick Saban did have a lot of NFL experience, that's a major risk. That is a big risk.
All right, let me ask you this here. If you had to guess, if they do decide to move on in season or even next year, is both Grier, let's just say this time next year, is both Grier and McDaniel gone, or you think one? If you had to bet your best guess. Forget about what you heard, your gut instinct here. Both gone or one?
I think they're both gone. I don't know how you look at the makeup of this roster, you look at the drafts, you look at some of the moves. I don't know if the season continues down its disastrous path. I don't know, what the basis would be, what the reasoning would be to keep Chris Grier around.
Yeah. And do you think you would keep Tua, let's say, like I say, Alex Smith type next year with the contract, draft the young guy this year? How's the 27 class compared to the 20? I know it's early, but like, is the 27 considered better than the 26? Would you wait it out?
Well, but the problem is I mean, Lenore Sellers, Fernando Mendoza, John Mateer, Arch Manning, who I'm not a real big fan of, Dante Moore, Nico Amalavea. These guys are either redshirt sophomores, third-year juniors, or fourth-year juniors. So, I mean, talk to me on January 16th after Junior Declaration Day.
Yeah, we'll definitely have you back on then. Tony, thank you so much, man. I can't appreciate it enough. You had that article. I said I got to get you back on. We appreciate it. Let everybody know what you got going on with Sports Keto. What you got? What work you got working on this week?
Well, I mean, we have the weekly risers and sliders. So, I mean, the Dolphin fans are probably one of a handful of teams that are looking forward to the 2026 draft rather than the Super Bowl or the offseason. So, which players are rising up and sliding, and we'll always have some breaking news eventually. Hopefully, a top 100 board.
Oh, perfect.
That's music to George's ears. He loves them boards.
Yeah, Will Johnson, number 5 on my board. I didn't sway from it. I didn't care about the injury. All right, so Tony, and we'll get Tony back on at draft time. He's fantastic. I used to listen to you when you go. I don't know. You still go on Joe's show? Joe in the morning on QAM. Joe Rose. I used to always listen to you.
I do Mike Dempsey in Jacksonville.
Okay.
Well, they're having a good season, and they don't have a number 1 pick, so I kind of joke with them.
I like that coach, man. I like that coach a lot.
Another sore subject with Anthony Campanelli doing work with that defense for Dolphins. I had to bring it up. I'm sorry.
That's all right. All right. So, again, thank you, Tony. We'll be on tomorrow morning at 10:30 a.m. Curtis and I, and Countdown to Game Day, breaking down the Chargers' in-depth matchup with the Dolphins like nowhere else. And then Sunday, the post-game show, Jason is going to be – I'll be at the game, so it'll be in the evening time, so stick with us. And, again, thank you, Tony, so much for joining us.
Thank you,
For Jason, for Tony, for myself, guys, stay safe. Fins up. We're out.